All right, here we go. I'm ready for some Riders on the Storm action. It's about what? I may have watched the wrong movie. Doors! Not to be confused with The Doors from 1990. This is brought to us by directors Sam Kesh, Duggan O'Neill, and Jeff Dessum. When millions of mysterious alien monoliths, referred to as doors, start to appear across the globe, about half the world's population disappear within these doors. That's right, their asses get Thanos snapped right into some fucking doors. Also, most people that are around the doors for any amount of time start to act a bit odd. So we get to see 3 different stories revolving around these doors as humankind tries to discover what the mystery is behind Doors. Doors is an anthology film. However, these 3 stories do all have something in common. The Doors. Not the group, but the alien doors in the movie. Unlike many anthology films, where the stories are absolutely different, they're not really related beyond being in the same genre, the stories here are all connected. They all take place within the same world. The same thing is happening to the world within all 3 of these stories. We just get to see it from 3 different points in time and 3 different perspectives. The first one is right there at the beginning when it all goes down. The other one is a little bit later on and we have a bit more information. And the last one's a while after it's happened and people have become a bit more comfortable with everything that's going on in the world. There is technically a 4th one, but it's really short and it's kind of the end of the movie, so I didn't count that one. We're gonna go over it though, because there is something about it that we need to go through. Now, the 3 primary stories I did overall enjoy. They all had a tight, interesting little story that had something to contribute overall to this thing that's going on throughout the movie. And it was pretty cool to be able to see this event and how it affected people from the beginning, the middle, and more or less the end. Each of the 3 directors helmed a different part of the movie, but you can't really tell. While yeah, the stories are different, the movie is very consistent tonally throughout. They're all really well made and done and performed for the most part, and it seems as if the directors all had a really good amount of communication to keep things in line. My favorite of the 3 would be the middle one because it does give us the most introspective into the Doors. We get to see the most about them in this middle section. That, and it is probably the most creative out of the 3, but that doesn't mean the other 2 that bookend it aren't good. The first one that takes place during the beginning of the event centers around a group of kids that are in detention. And when they're suddenly abandoned by their teacher, they're all just left there wondering what the hell's going on. And we get to see their short journey as they discover what's happening to the world. The 3rd story was interesting just from the viewpoint of being able to see that the world is kind of coming to terms with the fact that these things just exist. And seeing as how mankind has become more comfortable, at least to a degree at this point with the Doors, we get to see attempts at contacting either the Doors or whoever is controlling them. Even though half the population has disappeared and nobody really knows what the fuck these things are doing here, much less what they are, life prevails. People keep on going. And as with the other 2 stories, in this 3rd one, we get a bit more information to kind of fill out the entire narrative. By the end of the movie, taking in all the information from these 3 stories, you have a pretty good idea of what's going on here. But then there's the last segment. Now, this 4th and final segment only lasts about 5 to 8 minutes, but it is definitely the most lacking of all, and that really sucks because it's the last one and that's what they leave you with. Not only is that what they leave you with, but it is the final story and the final piece to the puzzle and gives you the conclusion to this overarching story. And I kinda didn't like where it went. Up to this point, we've had a thought-provoking, interesting story that's kind of kept you on your toes. You didn't know exactly what to expect. But here in this final segment, it goes off into cliche land and really just lost me. The direction they decided to go with this final segment added absolutely nothing to the story. In fact, it detracted from the story. They could have left it with the 3rd one being the final act of the movie and it would have been just fine. This movie would have been much better if they had just cut this final piece out entirely. Somehow in this 5 to 8 minute segment, everything falls apart. Like all the good stuff that came before is totally void in this last part. The story in this final part really isn't interesting. It's not very well told. The performances are too out there and don't don't fit with the rest of the movie, and overall jumps to a nonsensical ending that I think is trying to be daring and unexpected, but it's not. It just comes off as lazy and not any good. And for them to leave us on that note, it just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth overall. I still know that the rest of the movie isn't bad. It's actually really entertaining and I would recommend checking it out. But they dropped the ball with the payoff so bad that it did taint the rest of the film a bit. Overall though, the movie is really interesting and had me hooked until that last 5 to 8 minutes, and it just all falls the fuck apart. All the performances here are pretty good, with the exception of that last part. As a whole, they're really solid. I mean, there's nobody here that just like blows you away. Nobody's needing to be nominated for an Academy Award or anything, but everybody is really solid. Nobody offends, nothing's bad. These performances are all very effective. They all do what they set out to do, and they do it very well. There's not really anybody you're gonna recognize for the most part, with the exception of Josh Peck, which where's that guy been? And I hardly could recognize the guy from his Josh and Drake days. But he, like everyone else, does a fine job here. Now with that final section of the movie that seems totally out of left field, you shouldn't be surprised that the performances here feel totally out of left field as well. While all the other performances across all three of these shorts all line up in quality, the two performances in this short section are just really off. It almost seems as if this part was added in after the fact, like a studio or someone, even though this isn't a studio film, came in and said, hey, you need to add in this last part to explain it to everybody one more time. Which, by the way, no, you did not. You should have just left that shit the fuck out. Now, less so here as with the story. Even though this final section does kind of drag things down, the rest of the film is done very well. It's all really solid, and overall, the performances here are all really good. Now, technically, the movie does look really good. It's not a special effects extravaganza, but there are a fair amount of effects here. But it's not all just like CGI. There's a fair amount of practical work as well as camera trickery too, especially in the second story. They did a really good job with their camera work and editing here to make this world that they enter seem very alien. The middle segment was the standout when it came to the technical achievements of this movie, and it doesn't disappoint. Everything here looks really good. The only effect in the entire movie that I could pick out and say that's just a little bit suspect was right there at the end of the third story. I don't want to say what it is for fear of spoilers, but there's something in the sky, or a lot of somethings in the sky, and those things just slightly. They don't look terrible, but they do stand out just a bit. It's a fairly quick shot, so it's not like damning or anything, but I did pick up on it. But overall, including in that segment, everything here looks really nice. Guys, I did enjoy Doors. However, I can't deny the fact that that final part did just sour the whole thing a bit for me. As I mentioned a moment ago, I can't help but feel like this last part was tacked on after the fact. It doesn't seem like it flows with the rest of the movie, and it doesn't add anything to the story as the other stories did, nor does it fit into the timeline of all the other stories. Everything about it just seems cheaper and like it's an afterthought. Hell, the whole thing takes place on like a fucking Skype call or something. If that doesn't scream afterthought, I don't know what does. But if you take that part away, you do have a pretty solid, enjoyable, interesting movie here. The story is intriguing and presented in very interesting ways. The performances are all really solid, and the effects, practical or otherwise, all look really good. And if it weren't for the disastrous way that they ended the film, this movie probably would have ranked at least one level above where it does. But as it stands, Doors is absolutely worth streaming.
Across the street.
While that's not a bad grade, it could have been better. And it just goes to show you how quickly, within 5 to 8 minutes in fact, you can take a story and just throw it in the fucking trash. But if you are looking for the most part at least, a thought-provoking, interesting little sci-fi flick for the night, then check out Doors, and I think you'll have a really good time with it. Turn it off after the third story though, and just call that the end. Don't worry, you're not missing anything. So there it is, guys, my review of Doors. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Milky Way.
What is this? What is this?
In one of the stories, they do explain that there are teams of people that go into the doors to explore and then return. But they apparently run the risk of getting lost while they're over there. But what I didn't get is why no one ever thought to just tie a fucking rope to one of them and let them go in. I mean, like, really long rope. This is like government sanctioned shit. The government is sending people in here. They got enough money for a whole bunch of fucking rope and it would solve that problem right there. What the fuck? Did these people never watch fucking Poltergeist? Just saying, that's what I thought of the whole time.